That brings us to the 5-fight main card of UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal 2. And joining Keith and myself is Josh Gross. Josh, of course, a longtime writer, editor at Sherdog, all the way back from the early 2000s, has been back with Sherdog for some time now as Sherdog's editor-at-large. We are pleased and honored to have him participate with us. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
I'm fine. How are you guys doing?
I'm great. It's definitely good to have you here. We got what I feel are some pretty, I say pretty high stakes fights. Obviously, there's a title triple header at the top of the card, but even the rest of the main card, just good stuff for me as a fan. And actually, I'd like to ask you an as a fan question, like not betraying your picks for any of them, just looking at the 3 title fights at the top of the card: the welterweight title fight between Usman and Masvidal, the strawweight title fight between Weili Zhang and Rose Namajunas, and the women's flyweight title fight between Valentina Shevchenko and Jessica Andrade. Just on a fan level, which of those fights are you most excited for?
It's been so long, and this is not a cop out because I'm going to give you an answer, but it's been so long since I thought of things like from a fan perspective. I do think from like just a pure action storyline stakes that Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas fight is the one that I would single out is sort of you lock into lots of angles coming into the fight, and then you just talk about the two as competitors and how they match up. I would choose that one.
I'm actually leaning in the same direction there. I think all 3 fights have potential to be bangers. Maybe the title rematch at the top less so, just because we saw how it looked the first time. But yeah, Zhang versus Namajunas is the one that I'm marking out for, as I've not been in the industry for half my life. So like the fan perspective is maybe a little fresher in my mind. What say you, Keith?
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. It's Zhang versus Rose. That's just a fantastic matchup, especially, I know me and you really like to get into the X's and O's thing. Both girls are so incredibly talented. It's just a fun stylistic matchup. Even if it wasn't for a title, if this was a contenders matchup or something, if this is a low prelim, it's a fun matchup. We've seen the main event. We've already seen it, so that always loses a little buzz. And it's not one of the, it's a quick turnaround on the rematch. It wasn't one of these ones where, we've been waiting years. I think about, a matchup with, the second time George St. Pierre fought Matt Hughes. It was years later. There was years to make improvements. So that made a lot more buzz, and that's not the case. And then Andrade versus Valentina Shevchenko, that's also a fun X and O's matchup because Andrade is such a different opponent than Shevchenko has had. So that really intrigues me. But overall, it's Zhang versus Rose. I thought that was kind of an easy answer.
Excellent. Well, let's dive right in. The first fight up is a light heavyweight matchup between Anthony Smith and Jimmy Crute. Smith, the 32-year-old Factory X product, is 34-16 in his long and well-traveled career. He is 9-6 in the UFC across 2 different stints with the promotion. He'll be taking on Crute. The 25-year-old Australian is 12-1 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. Most recently, he fought twice in 2020, taking Michal Oleksiejczuk's arm home with him with a first-round Kimura at UFC Fight Night Felder versus Hooker, then knocking out Modestas Bukauskas at UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie in October. Perhaps reflecting those impressive recent performances, Crute is a bit of a favorite here. He's out there at -190, where you can get former title challenger Smith at +165 on the comeback. Keith, I'll throw this one to you first. Who do you have in this one, and how and why?
This is a really, really fun fight to start off the card. It makes sense for both of their careers, but I love the contrast. You have Anthony Smith, 50-fight veteran, versus Crute's 25 years old, up-and-comer. Like, Smith has double the amount of fights in his career than Crute has years on earth, and that's fun to me. Smith, he's well-rounded. Is he better on the feet? He's better on the ground. Like, I don't really know. He's competitive both areas. He's never been a great athlete. He's kind of your, even though he's up at light heavyweight, he's your kind of your classic stereotype middleweight, like not a great athlete, but he makes up for being technically sound. He fights with a high output, has some solid hand speed still in this point of his career. He attacks with combos. I like his variety in his attacks. Like he'll mix up his punches and kicks well. He doesn't have big one punch power. He's more of like of a compiler. Like yeah, he's gonna bloody your nose first. Then he's gonna give you the black eye. Then he's not gonna put your lights out with one shot. But he throws a lot of kicks, a lot of deep kicks down the middle. He knows how to use his length well. But the thing that concerns me is he's taken so much damage over those 50 fights, especially recently. You take Glover Teixeira, that fight, that was a historic beatdown. Take his fight against Rakic. Rakic tore up his legs, dropped him with leg kicks. It was painful to watch. And also, when he's a guy who does well when he's putting the pressure, but when he gets hurt, he can kind of back off and he gets in like wounded animal mode where he kind of like, or you see like the scared animal in the cage where they back up to the cage and kind of make it easier prey. We saw that against John Jones. We saw that against Glover Teixeira. That said, I don't want you to think I'm bashing him. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't have heart. I think Lionheart's a great nickname for him because even though he's overwhelmed in matchups, he's not going to quit. I mean, we saw that in the Glover Teixeira fight. Now, you move over to Jim Crute. He's 25, and he's at that age, me and you, Ben, we've talked about it a million times. He's at the age where you can make huge improvements. Each fight, we could see a completely different fighter. He's a good athlete. He's a bit of a brawler. And I think that has to do with, one, just the way he's built. He's a powerful guy. He's a big guy. He's got big muscles. If he lands, he can put you out. But also has some of that like fearless youth mindset. Sometimes they don't know better. But if he stays controlled, he's pretty good pocket boxer, and he's shown improvements each time. He's added in a lot of kicks to his game, high kick. He does those push kicks suddenly. And he's a good wrestler. He's got good timing on his entries. He's a very skilled grappler on the ground, very good at winning scrambles. What I love is he does the little thing in scrambles. He does the follow on the hip. When your opponent's scrambling, follow the hip, win the high head battle, cut the correct angles. He does all the little things we see in wrestlers, in the good wrestlers, and he's done that. He advances position on the ground. He's not going to just stay in your guard. He's going to move to a better position. And he has some awesome, awesome ground and pound. Early in his career, he would chase a submission and lose it, and that's not really the case anymore. He really has, cover the position, then land the damage, then look for something. Smith showed in his last fight that he hasn't done. However, I think this is more about Crute right now. The question is Crute a top-level heavyweight? And I think he is. I think he's going to land heavy on the feet. I think he's going to get some takedowns. And I think this is going to be a blowout decision. I think Crute's going to win. I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets 10-8 round there. And I didn't want to start off the main card with like a bold prediction, but I'm doing it right away. This is my lock of the night. Give me Crute as take it to the bank. Crute's my lock of the night.
All right, Josh, do you share Keith's sanguine confidence in the young Australian?
I have a lot of confidence in him. I don't know about lock of the night. That's Keith's department. I'm going to let him handle that one. But I would say that this sets up as a classic veteran scuffling sort of, win some, lose some Anthony Smith action against a young hot prospect who's actually been so impressive since that first loss. You never know how a fighter's going to react off that first loss. And for him to win the two fights that he has in the way that he has says to me that he belongs in the top, in the conversation of top light heavyweight prospects in the UFC. And I'd put him there before, alongside like guys like Rakic and Yuri Prochaska. And, there was some talk about other fighters in that weight class, who's the next hot light heavyweight. And I thought Crute deserved to be in that conversation. I still think he does. I expect him to win this fight. I think he comes in with a lot of confidence. He's a better athlete. He's a masher. He has no problem stopping people. I don't know if it goes the distance or it's a stoppage one way or another, but I expect Crute to have his hand raised and move forward off this kind of performance with some momentum.
I've been a little slow to come around on Jimmy Crute, and shameful as it is to admit, it's because despite how good he looked on the Contender Series, he debuted on an Australian card, and my just part of my brain went, you know what? They're just filling the card with Australians. Like, you know, he's no great shakes. I mean, he was a guy who at the time was 6-0, 7-0 on Hex Fight Series, which is probably Australia's best homegrown promotion. But I was like, yeah, he's not ready for the UFC. Turns out he's ready for the UFC. He is completely run game on everybody he's fought, except for a top 10 fighter in Misha Serkinov. And even there, I feel as though he probably learned his lesson from that. You know, he got over aggressive on the ground, and, you know, Serkinov is a super wily fighter and just the wrong guy to do that against. He has all the physical advantages here against Smith. I think you put it right, Keith. Just, you know, Smith is a middling athlete and has a ton of tread off the tires. And Crute is, I mean, obviously he's a physical specimen to look at. I think he's one of the biggest light heavyweights in the UFC. Not necessarily the tallest. He's like 6'2" or so, but I bet his like walking in shape weight is probably one of the bigger light heavyweights in the UFC. I don't know what the Australian term is for brick shit house, but whatever it is, he is it. Anthony Smith on the way up, he's become a well-rounded fighter. He's become a fighter where, like you said, Keith, it's hard to say whether he's better on the ground or on the feet. On the come up in the Midwest, you know, his sweet spot was the clinch. Like, he would just, you know, murder people with like knees and elbows in the clinch. He still does that in the UFC, but he's got just a much more complete skill set to go around it. I don't think it's going to make a difference here. I think Crute is too young, too athletic, too strong, making too many incremental improvements from one fight to the next. The only question for me really is whether Smith will hear the final horn. I'm going to pick him to make it to the final horn, but yeah, give me Jimmy Crute by lopsided decision here. And considering how much name value Smith has right now because of his own unlikely run to the top a couple of years ago, this is going to be a level up moment for Jimmy Crute in terms of his perception as a contender. Like, I think he's going to graduate from prospect to contender here. On the Sherdog staff, we'll probably have a talk about him moving into the lower reaches of the top 15 even, but we'll see.